What's going to happen in 2025 for measurement on iOS? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds. My name is John Katsir. We're doing this mini series on gaming growth in 2025. What's going to work? What's not going to work? What do you need to know? What do you need to change? Who knows? We're going to have all these discussions with lots of different people. Today, we're chatting with the co-founder of GeekLab. His name is Jesse, and his last name is unpronounceable, so I'm not even going to try. And we're also with singular Neils Beenen, who is a gaming expert also. And we're going to talk about iOS measurement, iOS marketing as it relates to where we are now and where we see things going in 2025. There's so many different things happening here. There's CAPIs, there's SSOT, there's unified measurement, there's triple M. There's, of course, SKAN, AAK. Are they actually going places? There's platform probabilistic, which is what I call AEM, and the other things that Meta and others are doing on the platform side for measurement. So there's so much going on. Yes, maybe give us a start point here, ground us with the challenges that you're seeing right now in iOS mobile measurement.
Right. Well, first of all, thanks for the summary. I actually almost got excited there. So
Done.
exhausted.
No more podcasts needed.
Right. There's so many acronyms and cool things and stuff happening. But yeah, so well, needless to say, it was April 1st, right? When Apple pulled the plug officially on IDFA. That was kind of ironically like fantastic. Hats off to that in a sense. But yeah, that was a while back now, and well, again, needless to say, we've seen that it's not Google installs have like surpassed like iOS installs, and there's a shift in revenue and ad spend and stuff that's happening. So needless to say that the impact is something that we've yet to actually fix, and I think that everyone knows that happened, but I think the main things that we main things that we lost were first, like the capability of do creative testing like we used to before. So you simply need vast majority of data points from the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel per creative in real time for you to be able to make these decisions. And unfortunately, we do see that things that work on Google don't apply 101 on iOS. So you can't just do that match, which is what we're lacking. Another one, which now we might see some uplifts with the AAK, but like retargeting, like was something that used to be a massive advantage. And then, well, we've seen what happened in the past 3-4 years. Yeah. And lastly, just attribution as well. Like, well, needless to say on iOS, that's been, well, we're going to deep dive into the specifics here with the conversion APIs and what the SDK networks are doing with the probabilistic and all this. But yeah, I think all of these combined have sort of resulted into this, that we're still in the situation where as an industry, we've yet to be on this more positive side of this, I'd say.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, and I think there's room for some optimism, and I think we'll get into that as we talk about the various methods that the platforms are using right now, and that MMPs have come up with, and Niels will have you talk about some of those as well. It's really interesting because I've talked to a number of marketers over the last couple of weeks who are saying, "Hey, for retargeting, what I'm doing is I'm just using banner ads, cheap banner ads on a bunch of big publishers. We're talking Meta, Google primarily, but others as well. And so they're saving their expensive ads, maybe rewarded ads, video interstitials or something like that are costing maybe $3-5 a pop or something like that per conversion. Right. And those are going to be their lower funnel, but then they're retargeting and at the same time having a sort of a brand explosion with these much cheaper banner experiences. And so it's kind of interesting how they're, kind of spending their way out of a problem, but also having some interesting ways of dealing with that. Anyways, Niels, talk about SKAN and AAK, how important they are right now. I mean, obviously, I'm going to preface a little bit with maybe some of my bias, and then I'm going to ask you, you can totally push back. You say you're full of crap, and that's 100% fine. So get ready. So on the one hand, I think, hey, scan is actually important because it is a deterministic signal that you can use. It is imperfect, it is imprecise by design, but it is deterministic, it is real, and when modeled, it can be very effective. On the other hand, with AAK coming out and basically being Scan 5, I don't see any groundswell of movement among partners, ad partners, and platforms say, hey, yeah, we're signing up, sign us up. We're going to do some development work. We're going to support it. Here we go. So it's kind of a big downer. Niels, set me straight.
I wanted to say you're full of shit, John, but like I'm nothing.
You just really wanted to do that, huh?
No, it's a joke. Of course not. I think, look, what you're describing actually ties into, but how has the industry developed in the past 2-3 years since the rollout of ADD? And the reality is that like we have multiple ways in which we can actually do measurement and multiple ways in which we can look at the results of our pay media. Scan is one of them. The SANs now modeling their own results. That is also one of them. Probabilistic attribution is one of them. In the mix, we also have Apple search ads, right? So on any given day, you can log into a dashboard of your attribution partner and try and make sense of what are all these networks actually reporting to me? How are my measurement partners duplicating the various signals that they're receiving? And what is actually the discrepancy between these partners? So I think that scan is one methodology of doing your measurement. If you have the tools to actually model your data out of the box, then of course you have a massive benefit. But yeah, like you need to analyze more than one set of data and you need to understand where discrepancies are coming from. Now, what you're saying here, and this is crucial, are we going to be relying on deterministic ways of attribution, or actually we're going to relying more on probabilistic ways of doing attribution? Whereas we know that the probabilistic way of doing attribution is not giving you a precise picture of actually what's happening on your campaigns. There isn't, of course, a wider question like, is Apple ever going to crack down on probabilistic, on fingerprinting? Now, that is something that's written in the stars. So far, it hasn't really been happening.
That sounds romantic. Wow.
I wouldn't say I've got bromance with Apple, but the reality right now is that like that is a discussion that is in a way parked, or like at least for now irrelevant. What is relevant for advertisers, everyone that's spending at scale, is how can I, in the best possible way, make sense of what of my ad dollars is actually reaching the desired outcome.
I was going to go here later, but you brought up some cool things and we got to dive into them when they're hot, Niels. So we're going to talk about SSOT. We're going to talk about unified measurement. It is interesting when we talk about probabilistic, there's a lot of things underneath that big banner of probabilistic, right? So there is fingerprinting, which has a level of tracking that people may not have consented to. There is also what I call platform probabilistic, which is AEM, where platforms are using data sources that they have, which are presumably privacy centric, and data sources that they're acquiring, which are presumably also the same, to make decisions about attribution, logic, and other stuff like that. But there's also methodologies like M, which is probabilistic, but entirely privacy safe. Absolutely. And doesn't do any tracking at all, and is theoretically, if you do it right, perhaps even better than all the others because it takes into account more of what's actually happening in the real world. We're going to go to Jesse in a bit on this, Niels, but we're going to stick with you for a second. Talk about these things and SSOT and this vision of unified measurement that I know Singular has come up with.
Yeah, I think I just want to add here incrementality as well, right? Like, again, like what is your methodology to determine, am I actually spending my dollars in the right way? Am I getting like the desired outcome? I was at Growth Summit in Barcelona last week. It was a very interesting panel on the same topic. Is there actually like one way or one source of truth how you can actually look at your performance data? Now, that sense goes diametrically against the reality on the ground when it comes to measuring iOS signals, because there's too many sources available. The nitty gritty really goes into how are you doing your deduplication? Are you favoring probabilistic signals over scan signals, for example? And if you do so, you're actually going to be favoring your programmatic partners over your SANs. That can actually lead to you making the wrong decisions on your marketing budget, right? Now, we're not even looking here at multi-touch attribution. This is not a reality of our industry so far. When you're not looking at like media mix modeling, we're not looking at incrementality measurement. So there's two things that we need to split here. Like one is, can I analyze my investments? Am I spending with the right partners? And then secondly, how am I going to do my optimizations? You want to be in a position where you can safely assume that the data that you're looking at is reliable data. And then based on that data, do your optimizations.
Yes. So your thoughts?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of great stuff to unpack there. All in all, moving a bit back towards just like the overall like importance of scan as well. I think it's a bit speculative, but at the same time, like for that to be like kind of the single source of truth, though, even though again, not necessarily even possible, but like it would require all the networks to fully adapt to all the latest ones, like versions and so on. And at the same time, the networks lack the incentive. They're coming in with their own AEM now and all this other stuff with the probabilistic. So that most likely won't happen. So then the next question sort of is that will Apple then break down on the probabilistic side, and which we briefly tapped onto, and there I'd say it's quite difficult for them to, in a sense, because a lot of these have already fully moved to server side of things, which already by nature makes it much more difficult for Apple to even like fully take control of that in any means.
Yeah.
And at the same time, then at the end, like, will probabilistic, fingerprinting or this, will that ever be 100% accurate? No, but at the same
It's in the
time,
name, right? Probabilistic.
yes, exactly. But then it really comes down to the purpose of what you're using it for. Like if you're measuring things on a creative level, if you're trying to figure out like which creative to optimize, that's enough. If it's 99.9, 99.8, that's enough. Like with scale, and for Apple to kind of track down on that, I think the only way would be to somehow route all the traffic through a certain their own
VPN. Yeah.
VPN, privacy relay or whatnot, and that would. I'm not a massive expert on. Well, I'm not an expert or even a specialist by any means on data architecture, so can't comment on this. But I would imagine that it would be quite expensive to route all the traffic in and out, like still like effectively, or even portion of it.
Not only would it be crazy expensive, it would be a single source of failure for Apple devices, right?
Right.
So the internet is designed to allow multiple routes so that you can actually, something works even when something breaks. So that is a real challenge. But there are different forms of probabilistic, right? And so the major platforms, like we've mentioned, AEM, TikTok has advanced SAN now. Obviously, Google does some modeling. Pinterest, X, Snap, they all do some level of modeling as well. How effective do you guys think that is? And obviously it's grading your own homework to an extent, right? So it's another signal to come in there, right, Niels? But how effective do you think those things are?
Yeah, the grading your own homework remark, I completely adhere to. I think what we're seeing now is also a bit of a correction in the market where I think the SANs are actually in a position to claim more of the activity that in maybe a world a year and a half ago would have gone to programmatic partners. The balance is probably somewhere in the middle. I remember that one of our friendly competitors at one point worked on an advanced integration with a SAN partner and suddenly saw an increase of 150% in activity on that specific.
It's amazing.
Now,
Magic.
it's amazing. My question is, were you then 150% off just a month ago? And the second question is, where are you deduplicating that activity away from? And I would wish that our industry would sometimes ask these questions like a bit louder, right? Because we just jump from the bandwagon of, this network suddenly is like, performing like extremely well. Now, again, there needs to be some balance here. Like we need to find an environment in which we have networks claiming activity, where after deduplication, we can actually say 95, 90% certainty. Yes, we are seeing the same numbers as you have. If these discrepancies become too big, 150% is quite large, I think, then of course there's a problem.
Let's dig into that just a little bit, right? Because you mentioned earlier, if somebody's using probabilistic, and to be specific about the version of probabilistic you're talking about, it was fingerprinting and the programmatic networks that privileges them. And then you mentioned, hey, if you're using skin, that privileges the SANs. Well, and if you use the SAN's own measurement methodology, guess what? That privileges them as well, right? And so essentially you have all the ad networks who want you to use a methodology that makes them look good. I mean, this is natural. This is normal. Everybody wants to look good. I want to grade my own homework too, right? I want to do my own performance review with my boss. Why wouldn't that be amazing, right? Absolutely. But I think what you've just highlighted is you need somebody who's looking at all of those things.
All of the data next to each other. And I think also like what we're seeing now, like we're supporting AEM on TikTok, we're supporting AEM on Meta as well. And if you then toggle the AEM on, of course, we see a jump in the actual campaign performance. These jumps are not as dramatic as like some of the jumps that I highlighted just early on. But yeah, of course, like, you're going to be modeling data. You're going to be claiming more events than we would probably previously award towards you. Now, again, if you're an advertiser, what do you want to see? Tell me what that network reported data is, right? Then also tell me what you as the MMP in a deduplicated fashion would also award to that specific network.
Yeah.
By the way, for that, because
go ahead, Jesse.
Because now at the time of the recording, like I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago when Meta allowed to share more info of AEMs with you guys and analytics partners, right? So since then, like have you guys? Yeah, curious to hear like what's your thoughts actually? Like how has it evolved since then? Like,
Niels, you may have some thoughts in there. From my perspective, what I've seen is that it's a slow integration. Even though it's all go, green lights on both sides, I've seen that some advertisers aren't fully on it yet, and sometimes Meta is not fully ready, or another. That's what I've seen. Niels, you may have a better picture.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to comment on that. Like one of the things, and that's the thing that I wanted to add to what I was just saying, is we as a company have very often said that the major media sources out there are the SANs. Like between a Google and a Meta and TikTok probably have about 70, 80% of share of voice, or like, market opportunity, so to say, right? Now, what we incorporate in Unified is where we also look at signal strength, and we're looking at like, what is the size of this network in a general marketing mix? We take that into consideration whilst we duplicate away from all the other networks that are also claiming that specific install. I know that doesn't answer the question about AEM generally speaking. The only update that I have is that on the customers that have now switched AEM on Meta, we do see a quite dramatic jump in performance.
And like Jesse said, that's now advanced AEM, or whatever their new terminology is for it, with additional data. Jesse, what are your thoughts here? You live and die by measurement. Your campaigns are successful or they're not successful. And ultimately, your clients aren't happy if you get an A+ 100% gold star from an ad network. They're happy if they get more users, players in their games who are buying stuff.
exactly. And exactly. And going back to the signals of truth question as well, and just like having all these different signals. Another one that we have is also like, web to app campaigns as well, using conversion APIs and stuff. So that's all, again, like another way of doing things alongside everything else. And it like that's something that we've utilized actually quite a bit. Both web to app campaigns that we partner up with Meta officially on that too, and helping mobile publishers and developers to actually do those web to app campaigns. But then on top of that, with our UA solution for self-attributing networks as well, like we have our SDK, and then it's a creative level framework. So instead of again using deterministic and focusing on user level information, we're kind of taking a step back and measuring everything on a creative level, and also then utilizing these web technologies essentially. So conversion API, events API to send events back to networks then. And in those cases, we've seen like great success. So we've actually been able to see that we're able to cut down cost and see that like the amount of daily new users that App Store Connect is reporting is going up, and the retention rate on there is matching kind of what we're seeing. But then again, like what these web technologies do, the sort of accuracy on those that Meta even reports is typically around 70%, unless you're including like email and stuff. So again, there's already like a discrepancy between what that's showing and then this. So, but yeah,
I find it super interesting that you're diving into CAPIs, because obviously that's growing massively, and that's become a huge thing. It even was mentioned in Snap's last quarterly earnings report. I'm talking Q2, not Q3, that just got released, saying that CAPIs were up 300%. Use of CAPIs were up 300%, and that was quarter over quarter, I believe, at that point, and that was driving their results. And so I was thinking CAPIs are largely a retail thing and other things like that. But you're saying you're using CAPIs in gaming, and they're being super successful.
Yes. Well, this is specific to also our methodology of using the RSDK integration and then this technology. And it's successful at the early levels of the funnel. So if you're optimizing towards installs, that's when like because the lower we go on the funnel, the sort of more false positives we get as we're just looking at things on a creative level, right? So out of the 100 users that came in, theoretically, if one made a purchase, so now you would have the 99% chance of getting a false positive, right? But like on that like install level, so we've seen good success. It's a fast way of optimizing things in real time, and allowing you to do specific creative testing as well.
Cool. And because you control part of that solution, you have some level of assurance, reassurance that it's real and things are happening, and you're actually, I like that a lot. It's deterministic in that sense. Very, very good. Maybe Niels, talk a little bit about some probabilistic methods, MMM, and your vision on that. I mean, we talked about off the top, had the IDFA all along, right? And we thought things were wonderful and great. Everybody knows that capturing a last click or last touch attribution doesn't capture the entire richness of somebody's journey to becoming a player and a buyer in your game, right? There's many more things. Somebody mentioned it. I saw something on social. I saw 3 ads. Then I saw this one and I clicked on that one. And all we see is the last one. All we saw was the last one. Theoretically, Triple M could capture more of the richness of that journey if it's done right. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think like my thoughts are more about like what do you actually need to determine what that mix is, what that media mix is that's performing. For that, you need to know like what am I spending with every single partner that I'm running, and what are the outcomes, right? If you have those two sets, you can also look at like what's the bottom line if I were to move one specific partner over one specific period. That is one way of doing your MMM. Now
we have to land the plane. It's getting late. It's very dark where Jesse is. He's been very gracious and staying late at night. Niels is just as late where you are, I'm assuming.
And we're in Helsinki. Well, we're in Helsinki, so it's 12. It's noon. No, just kidding.
Love it.
Helsinki now. No.
Sorry?
It's dark already in Helsinki now, right?
Yeah. Like, well, this is not edited. This is the real thing. I have a lot of lights on as well, so
it's dark. It's dark. You're far north, exactly. Let's talk about 2025. How do we see iOS game marketing evolve in 2025? Jesse, I'll give it to you first. Niels, I'll come to you second.
Yes. So, whereas we saw that after the ATT, sort of the spend started to shift towards Google. So this might be one of the reasons why we had yet to see Privacy Sandbox come to full light. But it might happen next year. It might actually happen next year. And I think at that moment of time, then as we lose that, we lose its like deterministic advantage, right? So we might then move back towards somewhat of a equal split. And that will be very interesting to see, as now then we're kind of forced to spend like maybe more equally between these two networks. Will that actually result in increased budgets on iOS, or will it just like be an outcome of decreased budgets from Google and a decreased budget in general? I obviously hope it's the latter one, so that first one, that the market actually continues growing and we're able to make great games. But I think that's sort of one big thing that we'll definitely see.
Yeah, I can see that. Niels, let's come back to you on this. I mean, are we going to be buying in the dark on both platforms in 2025? Or are we going to evolve our measurement systems so that we're, we got some light? Maybe it's not, midnight, noon darkness in Helsinki. Maybe it's the midnight sun in the summer.
No, I don't think that we're going to be buying in the dark. I think what we're seeing already is like the evolving landscape on the SAN side in particular. AEM or advanced AEM here is just a reaction to like the market, right? So that's the one part. And the second part is like, if we look at revenue generated, and this is across gaming verticals on iOS, especially in tier 1 markets, it is still outcompeting by quite a margin Android generated revenue, right? If we go to like Asian markets, of course, there's a different ball game. If we look at like maybe the high-end Samsung devices, but generally speaking, iOS is a solid investment. You can still acquire users if you have your measurements taken in order. The last thing, I think, what is Apple actually going to do, right? Probably we're going to see some advertising opportunities being evolved from the ASA platform. I wouldn't be surprised if that is going to be developed more into a network. And then I think also Apple introduced the gaming hub plans for 2025, which is going to be interesting.
What is the gaming hub?
It's like
Oh, sorry.
It's a hub for gaming.
It's like essentially, as far as I understood it, it's more like a combination of Game Center and editorial app store, in the sense that
Okay. Cool.
This in one place.
Gotcha. Excellent. Cool. Well, it's going to be an interesting year, no doubt about it. Thank you guys for participating in this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a ton.
Thank you, John.